When I was a little boy, my grandmother was just an ordinary grandmother to me. It was not until much later in life that I would realize that she was a very special grandmother. For example, it wasn't every grandmother that placed herself on top of a fully loaded truck with wooden boxes, packed with goods bound from Sweden to New York. However, this happened of course many years before I was born. It was also not until many years later that I completely understood the entrepreneurial spirit my grandmother had, and how it was extremely special for a lady in that time. Because, through her unique Swedish handmade creations, which were packed in those boxes bound for America, she gave work opportunities to a whole community in Sweden. And this is amazing, because from what I understand, my grandmother only wanted to be a farmer.
But she didn't become a farmer. Instead, between 1950 to 1980, she became a true success story in the exclusive textile industry. Ebba von Eckermann started her journey to success in the end of 1940 on the von Eckermann family estate, Sandvik, in a picturesque village called Ripsa, just an hour drive south from Stockholm. She started a small family business focusing on weaving and sewing on the estate where her husband Erik von Eckermann ran the family farm and managed the forest. Because weaving, that was something she knew extremely well. And as a farmer's wife, living far out on the countryside, Ebba von Eckermann wove her throws with great determination and passion to help support her family. And was it something that women could, beside everything else, isolated out there on the countryside, while their husbands worked on the farms and in the forests? It was to weave.
How did grandmother come up with the idea to specifically weave throws, or lap robes, as I believe they were called back then?
Because back then it was fashionable in Sweden to have Scottish throws in your house, and a lot of them were sold, but they always had a design with a fringe. So then I thought, I must do something different. And so I went back and forth thinking of different color combinations. And then I made collections for a more conservative taste that included dark browns and green colors aimed for gentlemen. And I made collections for more light-hearted and cheerful people, and aimed my collections at those women that would enjoy experiencing more color.
In 1950, when my grandfather Erik was traveling to America to study forestry, my grandmother joined him, cheered on by the now very enthusiastic and excited Ripsa women, hoping grandmother would be successful in America.
And then it just clicked.
So, with suitcases loaded with woven throws, they set off across the Atlantic. When arrived in New York, Ebba literally started knocking on the doors of the big American department stores.
And it would turn out that my grandmother, a farmer's wife from a small village in Sweden, had a great natural gift, and that was to market and sell her products. And my grandmother, she absolutely fell in love with America.
During 2 of her sales tours in the US, she even brought a loom with her that she set up at her different meetings and started weaving on. During the first road trip in 1950, Ebba and Erik bought a used car with the little money they had. Sometimes they even slept in the car due to their tight budget. They traveled from coast to coast, knocking on the doors of the large department stores in the big cities to show them Ebba's designs and sell the beautifully crafted woven throws from her little Swedish village, Ripsa. The first order they received was for 12 woven throws.
And when the buyer from Marshall Fields had bought the first 12 throws, he asked, "What if I give you an order of 1,000? What do you do then?" And this was during our first trip in 1950. And I said, "Oh, that won't be a problem."
Erik was also able to do his forestry studies, while Ebba took on America with a big bang. Ebba named her brand Countess Ebba von Eckermann. She added her noble title based on advice from her father, since she was of noble birth. And that was not something insignificant. He was right. The Americans thought it was both fun and very exciting to do business with the beautiful Swedish countess.
And it is extraordinary how my grandmother managed to create a whole image around her brand and her creations, way before image even became a conscious marketing term. A Countess, Ebba von Eckermann, that was something very special.
The brand evolved and it became a true symbol of timelessness, quality, absolute elegance, and a unique sensation.
This was also something the fashionable people in France discovered, and textiles were delivered from grandmother's little village in Ripsa to the exclusive great fashion house of Dior in Paris. In 1952, my grandmother created Ripsajackan, which became a real hit. But I have often wondered, how did she come up with the idea?
Well, my mother's birthday was coming up, and of course I had forgotten about it. She probably expected something, so I had to get my act together. This was the day before her birthday. So I took a small leftover piece from a throw, a good size for perhaps a shawl or something like that. And when I wrapped it around my shoulders, I saw the patterns and the colors matched in such a way that it looked like it could become a jacket. And it was just the right length, so I simply folded the corners of the throw like this, and then I buttoned up the top part here, and through some kind of magic I was able to complete my creation ready for the next day. Then, when Mother, who was usually hard to please, became so fond of it and said that it was oh so lovely, I realized that I had probably come up with something rather good. So I asked my mother if I could borrow it so I could copy it in my workshop.
Wasn't that about the same time, grandmother, that you came into contact with that legendary businessman Josef Anier, who introduced you to all those buyers at NK and its related stores? I mean NK, Sweden's most famous department store?
Yes. I got a meeting with him on Queen Street in Stockholm, where he had gathered a number of buyers together to meet me. He said, please unpack your bag so we can see what you have got. And he had a very serious look in his face. I unpacked and started to put on the jackets, one after another. This is something I like, he said. What do you all say? Oh, yes, the buyers all said too. The poor buyers, I hope it really was so, but it turned out well. He ordered 1,000 pieces. And what a feeling! When I came out on the street, my legs shook and turned into jelly.
Throughout the following years, many trips were made, from the now expanded weaving mill in Ripsa in the beautiful Swedish countryside to the large metropolitan cities of America, from New York to San Francisco. The international media continued to be amazed and impressed by the Swedish weaving countess. In the 1960s, Ebba was even introduced on American talk show programs, which was something very new at that time. Ebba no longer had to knock on doors, and the order books became full. But in the mid-1960s, sales to the department stores declined. Prices were getting squeezed. But as a result of that, Ebba started a new era. Private sales. Her collection had over time expanded. From only producing throws, she now also produced and sold amazingly beautiful clothing, mostly to America.
But grandmother, where did you gather all this inspiration and energy?
From the nature, of course.
Today I have, with great respect and admiration for my grandmother, realized that she was a very unique and an exceptional entrepreneur in the textile industry for her time. A woman who has made a great contribution to the global textile industry and a permanent mark in the Swedish textile history.
But in the beginning of 1980, after 30 years of production, too much strain was being placed on the finances as the production costs greatly increased. Ebba was faced with a very difficult decision. She either had to try and take large financial risks and make changes to her business, or close it down. Ebba chose to close it down. So, with her brand stronger than ever, she informed all her customers that Countess Ebba von Eckermann and her company, Ripsa Textiles, would no longer continue. But the news was not delivered as a sad affair, but instead as a grand finale to a glorious adventure.
So, what do you think, grandmother, about the fact that I'm now reviving your brand and all the values that you founded it on?
I think it is terrific. I'm so excited. I wish you so much luck, and I believe very much in what you are going to do.